ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. Hare Krishna everyone, and welcome to the session number 2. And it's so nice that all of you have joined today on a very early morning, we can say on the Sunday when you could do so many other things, but you have still joined us to listen to Bhagavad Gita. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate all the valuable time that you are investing in learning and understanding this wonderful knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So great. So let's begin. Today we are going to enter into the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, so we have understood the introduction of Bhagavad Gita in the previous session, but today let us dive into the Bhagavad Gita and gradually understand how beautiful this Bhagavad Gita is. It is the nectar. Actually, Bhagavad Gita is the manual for our life. Bhagavad Gita. So when we say Bhagavad Gita, we understand this is spoken by Krishna, but in the Bhagavad Gita, it is all about shlokas. Why do we call this as a Gita? Why do we call this as a song? Although there is no song within this, but then it is called as Bhagavad Gita, the song of the Lord, the song of Krishna. Why is it called as Gita or the song? It is because the scriptures inform us that every step of the Lord is like a dance, and every word that He speaks is a song. Katam ganam natyam gamanam api vamshi priyasaki. It is said that every word that Krishna speaks is as good as a song. So that is why this is Bhagavad Gita. And in order to understand Bhagavad Gita, at least theoretically, we should know and understand or accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At least theoretically, Prabhupada says this in the Bhagavad Gita introduction, that if you want to know and understand Bhagavad Gita, for now in the beginning state, at least theoretically we should understand that yes, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then that will set a very good foundation for us in order to understand the whole Bhagavad Gita, the different concepts that Krishna is saying. Because unless you understand somebody or accept someone to be supreme, the knowledge given by that person we may not accept as supreme. So it's very important that we accept, at least theoretically, that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. And then gradually we will understand during the course of this discussion of Bhagavad Gita that why Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That we will discuss very nicely. So this Bhagavad Gita, which I showed to all of you yesterday, we are going to refer to Bhagavad Gita as it is, written by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder of the ISKCON institution. So this Bhagavad Gita has so many different commentaries. If you go into the market, there are about more than 700, 800 commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. But Prabhupada has written this Bhagavad Gita as it is, because it is very important to understand Bhagavad Gita as it is, as it was told by Krishna. Now, how do we understand what Krishna has told? Only when somebody is very closely related to Krishna can understand the intent of Krishna. Only who is a pure devotee, who has done a lot of tapasya, one who has actually done a lot of devotional service, who is closely associated with the Supreme Lord, a bhakta is the only one who can reveal the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. The intent of the Bhagavad Gita can be understood by a pure devotee alone. And Swami Prabhupada, being an Acharya in the disciplic succession, in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. He is an authentic guru who has presented this Bhagavad Gita as it is. Now, this Bhagavad Gita as it is that we are referring to is very, very special. It's because the commentary written by Srila Prabhupada is actually so wonderful that it gives you the understanding of the Vedanta Sutras. The Vedanta Sutras are very technical. The essence of the Vedanta is given in this Bhagavad Gita as it is. And this Bhagavad Gita as it is written by Swami Prabhupada is actually accepted as a standard textbook for religious studies in all the major universities across the world. So many people who want to study spirituality, who want to understand Hinduism, who want to understand religious studies, they accept Bhagavad Gita as it is as a standard textbook across all the major universities. So it is very important. And if you see in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada has given all the 700 slokas originally spoken by and compiled by Vedvyasa, by Krishna and Arjuna. The conversations are there, and each word has a word-to-word meaning. It also has the translation of the shloka and also the purport, the explanation of the shloka. So Prabhupada has very painstakingly written the word-to-word meaning, the translation and the explanation of each and every shloka of the Bhagavad Gita. So this Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says that he has written it for the people who are on the street. That means that it is so simplified version. Doesn't mean that it is not having the importance. It is very, very highly elevated. But he has written it in such a way that even a common man can understand the import of the Bhagavad Gita. But whereas the previous acharyas like Ramanujacharya, Shankaracharya and Madhvacharya, all these great acharyas have commented on the Bhagavad Gita, they are for very elevated people, for those who have already acquired a certain level of understanding of spirituality, who have understood some principles of Bhagavad Gita. For them, they have given the commentaries. But whereas Prabhupada has written it for all of us so that we can utilize this and make our lives perfect. So that is how this Bhagavad Gita is very, very important for all of us. And Prabhupada has written as it is, Yatha Rupa, absolutely no difference between what Krishna has spoken and what Prabhupada is speaking. So now let us enter the very, very first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada has given the title for this first chapter as Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Another Sanskrit name for this is Sainya Nirikshana Yoga. This first chapter is also called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. It is called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. If we analyze in this first chapter, even Duryodhana is having Vishada. Even he was lamenting after seeing the army of the Pandavas. There was some anxiety within Duryodhana also. There was some Vishada in Duryodhana also. But this first chapter is not called as Duryodhana Vishada Yoga, but it is called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Why? Because in Sanskrit, the word yoga comes from the root word called yuj. Yuj means to link, to connect. So yoga means, the word yoga is not a conventional understanding that we have today. Anybody, when people talk about yoga, they generally refer to as some bodily postures or some breathing exercises. That is the normal understanding of people when they hear this word or they talk about yoga. But yoga is not just limited to the bodily postures or breathing exercises. No, the meaning of yoga means to connect, to link. Link between what and what? It is link between not the body and the mind. It is not the link between the mind and the soul. It is the link between the soul and the super soul. It is the link. Yoga means the link between the Jivatma, we the spirit soul, and the Paramatma, the super soul. That is what is called yoga. So here, when we are understanding Arjuna Vishada Yoga, how can lamentation, how can Vishada be a yoga? So that is very interesting now. Many times, when people are confused in life, it becomes very easy for them to accept spirituality. Many times when you have lot of problems, when you are undergoing lot of distress, it becomes an impetus for people to approach some saintly person and inquire about spirituality. And since Arjuna's lamentation is going to lead towards his connection with the Supreme Lord, that is why this particular first chapter is called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. And it is not called as Duryodhana Vishada Yoga because Duryodhana is nowhere thinking of connecting himself with the Supreme Lord. So that is why this first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So that is the difference. So now if you analyze in this first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this first chapter actually sets the precedent for the rest of the 17 chapters. So this first chapter is called the Purvanga for the 17 chapters that we are going to discuss further. The first chapter actually defines the problem. It makes us very clear what is the problem. So each one of us in our own lives, we have different problems. We are facing so many difficult situations and we are unhappy about those things. So it so happens that when we are going through these difficult situations, undergoing these difficult situations, oftentimes we don't define this problem properly, and that is the reason we don't get appropriate solutions. So whereas here in this first chapter, the problem statement is defined accurately, very nicely, and we are going to analyze this problem statement very nicely so that we understand the solutions that is given by Krishna in the future chapters. So that is why chapter 1 becomes very, very important. In fact, chapter 1 is Arjuna's Gita to Krishna. Arjuna is speaking Gita to Krishna. He is giving lot of arguments. He is going to reveal his mind and his ideas about dharma. Oh, this is right, this is wrong. We should be doing this, we should not be doing this. So we will analyze all these different things that Arjuna is going to present, and Krishna will later respond to these different questions of Arjuna. So now, in this Bhagavad Gita, there are two levels of dialogues happening between four characters. Two levels of dialogues. One dialogue is between Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, and the second level of dialogue is between Arjuna and Krishna. So this is how Bhagavad Gita has four characters: Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya, Arjuna and Krishna, the Supreme Lord. The conversation is between these four people. So we will dedicate this session to Srila Prabhupada. Now, this whole first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita can be broken down as shown in the screen. See, on the screen, I have this segregation or the breakdown of chapter 1. So, the very first section of the Bhagavad Gita, that is from 1.1, that is from shloka number 1 till shloka number 27, is the introduction. This is also called as Sainya Nirikshana Yoga. So these first 27 shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita are also describing the armies on both the parties. Who is on whose side? So the battlefield is described, and the different armies, different leaders, the different fighters, all this is explained from shloka number 1 to shloka number 27. That is why Prabhupada has chosen to keep this title as Observing the Armies on the Battlefield. So it is Arjuna's Vishada, that is true. At the same time, it is also observing the armies on the battlefield. So that is how. Now this first section can also be divided into 3. So if you see the shloka number from shloka number 1 to 11, the first 11 shlokas are describing the preparation for war. And then the section number 2, that is section B, is describing the signs of victory of the Pandavas. So in the very first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, already we are seeing some signs for the victory of the Pandavas. So it is very clear in the first chapter itself that Pandavas are going to win this battle. And then in the section 3, Krishna's wonderful quality as Bhaktavatsala becomes very obvious. From shloka number 21 to 27, that how Krishna, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the master of the whole universe, who is master of all the universes, he is taking a very menial position of a charioteer. Can you imagine that the Prime Minister of India being a chauffeur for us or somebody else? No. We cannot imagine that. But here, Krishna, who is the Prime Minister of the whole universe, is taking a very, very small position of a charioteer of Krishna. So that is his Bhaktavatsala. That is how the Lord is so, he is so fond of his devotees that he is ready to take even the menial position. So that's very nice. And then in the section 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is going to speak, and this is where what is called as Arjuna Vishada, that he is going to express all the different reasons why we should not fight. Although they are on the battlefield, now Arjuna is going to give different reasons. He is going to give 5 reasons why we should not fight. He is confused of his duty now. And this happens with all of us. Many times in life, we also face some tough situations. Dharma sankat. हम कहते हैं ना, dharma sankat. So sometimes we face some situations where we are confused about our duty. So Arjuna is also going to present to all of us his doubts and his reasoning behind why we should not go ahead with the battle, with the fight. So this is how we have, this can be broken down, this whole first chapter. You can take a screenshot, or if you want you can message me later, and then we can, I can share that with you. So now I want maybe one of you to unmute. Let me see. Okay, there is Jay Chandan, there is Samit Thakur. Okay. So Achyutanji, you can unmute. I'll just unmute you. Am I audible to you? Can you speak, Achyutanji, now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, good. All right. So I'll call one of you one by one while we are discussing different shlokas, and you can all repeat the shlokas, and you will also get an opportunity to chant the shlokas. So that way it will be very, very nice. So each one of you will be able to chant the shlokas. Just by chanting the shlokas, our heart will get purified, our heart will get cleansed. They are very, very potent because it's all connected to the Supreme Lord. So please repeat after me, Achyutanji, one by one, line after line, the very, very first shloka of the Bhagavad Gita. Dhritarashtra uvacha Dharma kshetre kurukshetre समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवश्चैव किम् अकुर्वत संजय. Yes, Achyutanji, can you give a try chanting this whole shloka? Yeah, you can try.
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतयुत्सवा मामक पाण्डवश्चैव किम अकुर्वत संजय.
Wonderful, very nice. Wonderful, great. So you can all repeat this word to word meaning also. I'm going to display that on the screen, and Achyutanji, you can repeat it. Dhritarashtraha. King Dhritarashtra. Uvacha. Said. Dharmakshetre. In the place of pilgrimage. Kurukshetre. In the place named Kurukshetra. Samavetaha. Assembled. Yuyutsavaha. Desiring to fight. Mamakaha. My party, sons. Pandavaha. The sons of Pandu. Cha. And. Eva. Certainly. Kim. What? Akurvata. Did they do? Sanjaya. O Sanjaya. Wonderful. Please repeat the translation as well. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? Being desirous to fight. Okay. So this is very nice here. The very first shloka. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So very, very interesting shloka. And very, very important shloka as well. Because this is the shloka which will set the mood for understanding for the rest of the first chapter and the Bhagavad Gita now. So here, who is this Sanjaya? As I said, there is two levels of dialogues in the Bhagavad Gita. The first is happening between Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, and the second is between Krishna and Arjuna. So now, who is this Sanjaya? Sanjaya is the son of Gavalgana. So Gavalgana is the minister of Shantanu, who is in the Kuru dynasty. Shantanu is supposed to be the ancestor of all the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So Gavalgana was the minister in the court of this Kuru dynasty. So the son of Gavalgana is this Sanjaya, who is now an assistant to Dhritarashtra. By the way, Sanjaya also happens to be the disciple of Vedavyasa. So it so happened that before the battle of Kurukshetra, before the war began, Vedvyasa approached Dhritarashtra and asked him if he needs a boon to witness the whole battlefield and see the whole battle, and he wanted to give him Divya Chakshu, he wanted to give him the divine vision to observe the whole battle. Now Dhritarashtra said, "My dear Vedvyasa, I have been blind all throughout my life. I have not seen my own sons all my life. Now why should I get this divine vision to see the death of my sons? So I don't need this vision. What you can do is, however, please give this divine vision to my assistant Sanjaya, who happens to be your disciple as well." So that is how this divine vision was given to Sanjaya. And Sanjaya also was a very close confidant of Dhritarashtra, because many times, even in our own cases, you see, we hear the news from so many news channels, and it is not necessary that we have to believe each one of them, because each news channel has its own masala, and they will add masala, and they will completely give misinformation sometimes. But whereas Sanjaya is not like that. Dhritarashtra had full confidence in Sanjaya. So that is why Vedvyasa also chose Sanjaya to be the best person who can actually narrate and give information to Dhritarashtra. So now, along with this divine vision, Sanjaya was also given the boon that Sanjaya can be in the battlefield and he will not be affected by any of the weapons. There are so many arrows that are getting shot in the battlefield, and so many weapons are released, but he is not going to be injured by any of those weapons. And at the same time, he was also given boon by Vedvyasa that on the battlefield, Sanjaya can hear each and every conversation that is happening between the great leaders, and that is how, although Sanjaya was very far away from the speakers, he could still hear all that was going on in the battlefield in spite of all the noise that was there. So Sanjaya was given this wonderful boon. What a technology, isn't it? Wish we could have some technology like that. You know, just now when we had multiple speakers on this platform, it creates some noise and we cannot hear. That's why I have to keep all of you mute. So, but you see, during that time, the technology was wonderful. So now, it so happened that Sanjaya was on the battlefield witnessing all these beautiful things, not beautiful, actually very ghastly things on the battlefield, and the war had already begun, and on the 10th day of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Bhishma Pitamaha fell down on the Sharapanjara, on the bed of arrows, that is when Sanjaya decided, oh, it's a very, very important news, and I cannot be here on Kurukshetra, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. I have to immediately rush to Hastinapura and give this news personally to Dhritarashtra. So that is why, my dear listeners, we should know that this very first shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, which is now spoken by Dhritarashtra, was not spoken before the battle, but it was spoken on the 10th day of the battle, when Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows. So this particular shloka, which we just now recited, was not before the battle, but on the 10th day of battle. That very same evening, Sanjaya had to go back to Hastinapura, and then he narrated all that had happened, that Bhishma now is fallen down, and a great warrior like Bhishma is now lying on the bed of arrows, and he has not yet died. He is still there because he had Ikshamrityu. So Bhishma has not left his body. His prana is still there within the body. But This is the situation. Now Dhritarashtra started lamenting, and in that course of conversation, that evening of the 10th day, Dhritarashtra became inquisitive to know what had happened, everything. He wanted to know all that had happened in the past 10 days, and now he requested Sanjaya, he is asking Sanjaya, please tell me everything about this war. And that is how now Sanjaya is actually giving the flashback of all the previous 10 days. That is how the first shloka was spoken by Dhritarashtra here on the 10th evening of the battlefield. So this is very, very important to know the timeline of the Bhagavad Gita. So now the question may come to you, okay, alright, that you are telling that this was spoken on the 10th day, but when was this Bhagavad Gita actually written? When did this Bhagavad Gita written or compiled by Vedyvyasa? Was it during the battle, when the battle was going on? Is that when Vedyvyasa compiled this Bhagavad Gita? No. Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata, as I told you in the last session, and Bhagavad Gita was compiled by Vedyvyasa 600 years before Dhritarashtra was born. So, Bhagavad Gita was actually written 600 years before, approximately 600 years before this Dhritarashtra was born. Can you imagine? Just like the movie is not directed or produced without the script. First the script is written and then the movie is directed and produced. So similarly, this Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, was written much before the actual events had already happened. Why? Because Vedyvyasa is a Trikala Jnani. He already was aware of what is going to happen in the future. So that is how this whole Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata was compiled by Vedyvyasa before 600 years before Dhritarashtra was born. By the way, you should all know, and you must be already knowing, that Dhritarashtra is actually the son of Vedyvyasa. You all know that situation that Chitrangada had died. Shantanu had two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. And Vichitravirya also died. He married Ambika and Ambalika, but without sons. And that is how Vedyvyasa was called by Satyavati, and by the request of Satyavati, Vedyvyasa, using his semen called the Niyoga Paddhati, which was used during the olden days, he impregnated Ambika and Ambalika, and that is how Dhritarashtra and Pandu both were born. So they are actually in one sense the sons of Vedyvyasa, both Dhritarashtra and Pandu. So all this background I am telling you so that we are aware that Bhagavad Gita should be understood with all this context. It's very important. Alright. Now, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. So this place of Dharma called Kurukshetra is mentioned in our scriptures that it's a very, very auspicious and it's a very, very potent place. It is an extremely important place called Kurukshetra. Srinivas Madaliji also has joined us. Thank you so much. So now, this Kurukshetra also has a wonderful background. If you see, this Kurukshetra is named after King Kuru. Who is this Kuru? Kuru is the grandson of Surya Bhagavan, sun god. So sun god has a daughter called Tapati, and Tapati's son is Kuru. So Kuru, this great king, had performed lots and lots of austerity in this place of Dharmakshetra called Kurukshetra. And in fact, he had asked a boon from Brahma that this particular, from the Lord, that this place should be named after him. and that is why it is called as Kurukshetra. And when Parashurama, Lord Parashurama, had gone on a marathon on killing all the impious kings of this world, after killing all those kings, he wanted to repent and he wanted to do Prayashchitta, and for that Parashurama also had visited Kurukshetra, and he performed his repentance at the place of Kurukshetra. So this Dharma Kshetra is very, very pious. In fact, the Devatas also, they come and perform their activities, the spiritual activities in Kurukshetra, it is said. So in all the Vedic literature, Kurukshetra is considered to be a very, very pious place. So now, very interestingly, why is Dhritarashtra so much worried about the place of Kurukshetra? Actually, Dhritarashtra is very, very fearful about this place, Kurukshetra. And there are two reasons why Dhritarashtra is fearful of this place, Kurukshetra. Number one, he is thinking, what if my sons who are so adharmic, who are so irreligious, and they are in this place of dharma, what if this place of dharma influences my sons not to fight? If they become very dharmic and they compromise, if my sons compromise, then there will be no war. It's a big problem for Dhritarashtra. You know why? Although Dhritarashtra externally he expresses his putra moha as if, oh, I love my son so much, but deep within the core of his heart, Dhritarashtra has a desire to rule the Hastinapura. He wants to be on the throne of Hastinapura. So that is why he is somehow wanting Duryodhana to continue this fight. He doesn't want Duryodhana to be influenced by the place of Kurukshetra, this Dharma Kshetra. So that is this material love. In this material world, often we display a lot of love to people. But deep within each one of us, if we analyze, we have our own self-interest, we have our own certain expectations from certain people. And when that expectation is not met, then we are an outcast. As long as I am satisfying your expectations and desires, I love you, I love you, I love you. But moment I don't fulfill those desires, then we are a social outcast. So that is the nature of this material world, very nicely depicted by Dhritarashtra here. Dhritarashtra very externally shows, oh, I love my son, but deep within he has his self-interest of ruling the king, because all these years he's been sitting on the throne. Although Duryodhana is on the battlefield in the forefront, but it is Dhritarashtra who is nicely sitting and ruling. And he doesn't want to give up that seat so easily. He knows as long as my son is victorious, I am going to sit on this throne. He is very clear about it. So he doesn't want to give up that position here. So that is reason number one. Reason number two, why he is fearful of this place Kurukshetra, is because what if this place of Kurukshetra positively influences these Pandavas who are already very dharmic. So the Pandavas are very, very dharmic, and if it favors the Pandavas, then my sons are going to lose, and I am still going to lose the throne. My sons will also lose the throne. So that was a worry for Dhritarashtra. Actually, Dhritarashtra was torn between, hoping for the impossible and fearing about the inevitable. He was torn between these two emotions. It was very evident. And now, if you see, he is so confused. In the very first shloka, it is very evident his partiality also. He is saying, Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. Very clearly saying that my sons are belonging to the Kuru dynasty and the sons of Pandu are there separate. Actually, this is partiality. They are his nephews, and they also are actually the part of Kuru family, Kuru dynasty only. But very cunningly, Dhritarashtra in the very first shloka is saying, Mamakaha, only my sons are Kurus, and the sons of Pandus are separate. As a king, Dhritarashtra was supposed to see each and every subject equally, with equal vision. But you see what's happening here now? Dhritarashtra is not having an equal vision. He is very biased towards his sons. And then, Kimma Kurvata Sanjaya? It is a rhetoric question. If you see in the second line itself, it is said, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha. Yuyutsava means they have desire to fight. He himself is telling in the second line of the shloka that Yuyutsava, they have gathered only to fight. But in the fourth line he is saying, Kimma Kurvata Sanjaya? What did they do? Arey Baba, when you are sitting on the dining table, what else can you expect? When you are sitting on the dining table, you will eat only, right? People will eat only. But here, there is a reason why Dhritarashtra is asking. They all have assembled in the battlefield only. Battlefield because to fight, but still he is asking. He is asking, what did the sons of Pandu and my sons do? So that is very, very important. So here, this cunningness, this diplomatic behavior of Dhritarashtra was identified by Sanjaya. Sanjaya understood this. And we should know very beautifully, Krishna, Prabhupada also in the first purport of the Bhagavad Gita is explaining that this field of battlefield of Kurukshetra is a place of dharma, and what can we expect on the place of dharma? It so happens that just like in a paddy field, the paddy is kept and all the weeds are taken out. Similarly, on this field of dharma, the adharmic elements, the weeds, will be plucked out by Krishna. And who are those adharmic weeds? This Kauravas and Pati. All these weeds will be taken out. That is very, very clear and evident. So there is so much of background in this very first shloka. There is so much that we should know. That how Dhritarashtra, when was this spoken, what happened. So all these details are there. So that is why Bhagavad Gita should be understood in a proper context. Very important. So Vinod Chandan is asking, what is the significance of cows? Okay, great. And is also asking, Shivram Chaitanya is asking, is Sanjaya also biased similarly to the king, or he is a good person? No, Sanjaya is not biased. He is very neutral, and in fact, deep within, he is a very, very great devotee of the Lord. So he is very clear. Actually, Kim Makurvata Sanjaya? When Dhritarashtra is asking what happened on the battlefield, the last shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, very beautifully Sanjaya is saying, I really want to mention, since you asked this question to me now, I want to read this shloka. In the last shloka, the 700th shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, Sanjaya is saying, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurjanaha, Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. You see, it is very clear from this shloka that Sanjaya is glorifying. Wherever there is Arjuna, wherever there is Krishna, victory and fortune will be there. So if you can introduce Krishna in your life, victory is yours. Fortune will be yours. That is the secret of Bhagavad Gita. When we have Krishna on our side, just like Arjuna did, victory will be on your side. That is the confidence that Bhagavad Gita gives us. When you have Krishna with you, it's all yours. Life will be successful. Although we may fight so many different small battles, we may lose sometimes, but ultimately in the battle of life, we will become successful because Krishna is on our side. That is the beauty of Krishna. That is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. So now, what is the importance of cows? Yes, we will come to that point also. In the little later section, we will discuss the importance of cows very nicely in detail. So now, Prabhupada says in the first purport how to understand Bhagavad Gita also. All of you please understand, Prabhupada in the purport is writing that the Bhagavad Gita is a theistic science. Prabhupada is saying Bhagavad Gita is a philosophical science. And when we say it is a science, it means it can be experimented and we can actually get the benefits out of it. It is verifiable. Just like any science experiment, we can do certain experiments on certain elements and it is verifiable. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita, the concepts of the Bhagavad Gita, the ideas, the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, it is a science. And when we talk about science, it means all this is experimentable and the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita is also realizable. We can realize this. It is verifiable. So that is why it is not a religious text. It is not some book of the Hindus. It is the manual for life, for human life. So it is a science and we are here to understand the science of human existence as explained to us by the Supreme Lord Krishna. And how to understand this science now? Prabhupada explains very beautifully. Prabhupada says if you want to understand this science, you have to study this science scrutinizingly. Not you just read, no. We have to scrutinizingly study. And the second is, how do we study? In the association of right-minded people. Mind you, it is not, I did not say like-minded people. Right-minded people. In the association of devotees, we have to understand. We have to understand this Bhagavad Gita without any personal motivations, without any personal interpretations. No. It should be understood as it is. And we have to understand, number 4, in parampara, in the disciplic succession. This knowledge cannot be understood from any Tom, Dick and Harry. No. It cannot be understood like that. This is a science. So many people, so many politicians have written Bhagavad Gita, so many film stars or so many other artists have written Bhagavad Gita, commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. It's quite famous book. Each and everybody wants to write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Cannot be understood like that. Bhagavad Gita should be understood in the disciplic succession, and Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita. That we have to accept this from a self-realized soul coming in parampara. So this is the background of the first shloka. So before I go to the next shloka, do you have any questions? Before we dive into the next shloka, do you have any questions? By the way, I hope I am audible to all of you. If I am audible to all of you, please make some noise in the comment section. Okay, have I lost all of you? Can somebody unmute and say something? Just okay, great. Okay, good.
No, we can hear you. That's fine.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that reciprocation. Okay, so wonderful. So now let us dive into the second shloka now. It's very, very important. As I told you that Sanjaya has now understood the mood of Dhritarashtra, and let us see what Sanjaya has to say. So I would like to call now Srinivas ji. You can unmute yourself and please repeat after me. You will all get chance to repeat the shlokas, so that will be very nice. Okay. So please repeat after me, line after line. Sanjaya uvacha.
Sanjaya uvacha.
Drishtva tu Pandavanikam.
Drishtva Pandavanikam.
Yudam Duryodhanastada.
Yudam Duryodhanasada.
Acharyam upasangamya.
Acharyam upasangamya.
Raja vachanam abrave.
Raja vachanam abrave.
Wonderful, very nice. So please repeat the word to word meaning also. Sanjaya.
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 Sanjaya
Uvacha
Uvacha
said,
said,
Drishtva
Drisva
after seeing,
after seeing,
to
to
but
but
Pandavanikam,
Pandavanikam,
the soldiers of the Pandavas,
soldiers of the Pandavas,
Yudham,
view,
arranged in military phalanx,
arranged in military phalanx.
Duryodhana,
Duryodhana,
King Duryodhana,
King Duryodhana,
Tada,
Tada,
at that time,
at that time,
Acharyam,
Acharyam,
the teacher,
the teacher,
Upasangamya,
Upasangamya,
approaching nearby,
approaching nearby,
Raja,
Raja,
the king,
the king,
Vachanam,
Vajanam,
words,
words,
Abravit,
Abravit,
spoke.
spoke.
Please repeat the translation. Sanjaya said,
Sanjaya said,
O king,
O king,
after looking over the army
after looking over the army
gathered by the sons of Pandu,
gathered by the sons of Pandu,
King Duryodhana
King Duryodhana
went to his teacher
went to his teacher
and began to speak the following words.
and began to speak the following words.
Wonderful. So now, this is very interesting here. So Sanjaya is saying, Uvacha, Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Yudam Duryodhanastada Acharyam Upasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravit. So what did Duryodhana did now was, here Sanjaya is referring to Duryodhana as a king. Although Duryodhana is not a king still, it is Dhritarashtra who is the king. Duryodhana is just the prince. But still he is referred here to as a king because of his diplomatic behavior. And what did Duryodhana do now? After looking at the battlefield, after looking at the opponents, the army of the Pandavas, he was flabbergasted because he had 11 Akshohinis and the Pandavas had only 7 Akshohinis. Totally 18 Akshohini Sainya fought in the battlefield. I will give the details very soon about what is an Akshohini. So, he is very flabbergasted to see the kind of arrangement that is being done from the Pandava side. And here, we should know that Duryodhana is a very expert leader. We should all know that Duryodhana is a wonderful leader. He has a lot of leadership qualities. Although he is very cruel and he is not a devotee kind of a person, but we should really appreciate his leadership qualities and especially his diplomatic behavior. You see, on the battlefield, he is not the king, but he is acting like a king because he is the foremost prince. He was supposed to go and talk to the commander-in-chief. And the commander-in-chief for the very first day was Bhishma. But he is not going to Bhishma. He is going to Dronacharya now. So that is why he is very diplomatic here. He is very, very cunning fellow. And he knows how to manipulate things. He knows how to deal with people. So leadership qualities are very much there in Duryodhana. So we should not deny that. He is very expert in being a leader. But unfortunately, it's what he used that leadership quality for. That matters a lot. For adharmic principles, for his own sense gratification. So that is a problem. So Duryodhana was very, very diplomatic here. Now, after going to Raja Vachanam Abru Acharyam Upasangamya. He's going to the Acharya, Dronacharya, and let's see what did he do there. And this is another very interesting thing. Okay. I want to call upon now. Vinit, can you come online? Okay. I have unmuted you now. You can repeat after me, okay?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please repeat. Paschaitam Panduputranam
Paschyatam Panduputranam
Acharya Mahatim Chamum
Acharya Mahatimachumam
Yudam Drupada Putrena
Vyubhudam Drupada Putrena
Tava Shishyena Dhimata.
Tava Shishyena Dhimata.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now you see what happens here. So here, please repeat. Pashya,
Pashya,
behold.
behold.
Etam,
Etam,
this.
this.
Panduputranam,
Panduputranam,
of the sons of Pandu.
of the sons of Pandu.
Acharya,
Acharya,
O teacher.
O teacher.
Mahatim,
Mahatim,
great.
great.
Chamum,
Chamam,
military force.
military force.
Yudham,
Vyudham,
arranged.
arranged.
Drupada Putrena,
Drupada Putrena,
by the son of Drupada.
by the son of Drupada.
Tava,
Tava,
your.
your.
Shishyena,
Shishyena,
disciple.
disciple.
Dhimata,
Dhimata,
very intelligent.
very intelligent.
Please repeat the translation. O my teacher,
O my teacher,
behold the great army of the sons of Pandu,
behold the great army of the sons of Pandu,
so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple,
so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple,
the son of Drupada.
son of Drupada.
Alright. So you see this fellow, this Duryodhana, the choice of words. He's very expert in using the words here. This is a very beautiful verse actually, and you can understand the mood of Duryodhana here. By the way, as I told you that Duryodhana is not directly speaking in the Bhagavad Gita. It is actually Sanjaya who is narrating this whole thing. So now, although it is Duryodhana's words, but actually Sanjaya is one who is actually speaking these words to Dhritarashtra. So now, very nicely he is saying here, oh my teacher Dronacharya, see how beautifully, nicely, expertly the military phalanx of the Pandus is being arranged. Why is he telling this to Dronacharya? To make Dronacharya realize his mistake. Actually, Duryodhana is pointing out Dronacharya's mistake here. He is telling, my dear teacher, you have given all this military knowledge to Tava Shishya. Who is that Tava Shishya? The son of Drupada. The son of Drupada is who? Drishtadumna. Drishtadumna is the son of Drupada. Now, Drishtadumna was born to kill Drupada, and Drupada Dronacharya. And Dronacharya was very much aware that Drishtadumna's very birth is to kill me. In spite of knowing that Drishtadumna is going to kill me, Dronacharya imparted all this military knowledge to Drishtadumna. And Duryodhana is pointing out that mistake now. He is telling, see, you have given all this wonderful knowledge to him, and today he is standing on the opposite side, and he is facing towards us, and he is about to fight with us. And on the very first day of the Kurukshetra, the commander-in-chief on the Pandava side was Drishtadyumna. And here was Bhishma. So, one more very important thing to notice here. Actually, Duryodhana could have directly told that Drishtadyumna has arranged this nice military phalanx. But he is not taking the name of Drishtadyumna here. How is he referring to Drishtadyumna here? He is referring as Drupada Putrena. He is not telling Drishtadyumna, he is telling Drupada Putrena, the son of Drupada. Why? Because there was a feud between Dronacharya and Drupada. Both were enemies. Now he is taking Drupada's name to incite anger within Dronacharya. So Duryodhana is very, very cunning. If I take Drupada's name, Dronacharya will become angry. That is why, to incite that anger within Dronacharya, he is telling Drupada Putrena. So what happened was, Dronacharya and Drupada both are contemporaries, and they both studied in the same Gurukul, and the Guru was Bharadwaja, who happens to be the father of Dronacharya also. So Dronacharya and this Drupada both were friends, and it so happened in the friendly talk, Drupada had told Dronacharya in the childhood that I am going to give you 50% of my property, my kingdom to you. In a very joking way, in a nice friendly way, he had told, and he had promised Dronacharya that I will give you 50% of my kingdom to you. And then he went to his kingdom and he was ruling the kingdom. But whereas Dronacharya, we should know this character Dronacharya very nicely. Dronacharya, although he is fighting from the Kaurava side, Dronacharya is not an ordinary person. Extremely powerful person. And very austere person Dronacharya is. Dronacharya was a Brahmana, and as a Brahmana, he followed something called as Shiloncha Vritti. Shiloncha Vritti means it is a kind of austerity where he will go and beg. Generally, Brahmanas are supposed to go and beg alms, and then they will eat and feed the family. But whereas Dronacharya used to follow Shiloncha Vritti, that means when the farmers, they used to harvest. After harvesting, when there used to be some food grains left out in the field, those food grains used to pick up, collect them and feed his family, his wife Kripi and son Ashwatthama. He never begged from anybody. Dronacharya never went to any house to beg anything. Whatever was left in the field, those grains he used to pick up and eat. That is how he used to maintain the family. That is how austere he was. But then, one day now, this Ashwatthama, it's a long story, but he got to know that what he's getting as in the form of milk is not milk. He was getting the rice flour mixed with water, and that was given to him as milk all throughout his life. But the moment once he tasted the real milk from the hands of Duryodhana, he got to know that my mother is not feeding me true real milk, and she is feeding me something else. Now this is the power of eating or having something from a place of people who are non-devotees. Very, very careful we should be. When you are eating anything from anybody's house, we have to be very careful. That's why as devotees, we generally don't take anything from people's house unless they are devotees, because the consciousness directly impacts. And we will definitely dive and discuss this particular aspect of food in one of our future discussion and really understand how food directly impacts our mind. So that is how Ashwatthama's mind got polluted when he took the milk from Duryodhana. And then Kripi started asking, now you please do something you have to get at least one cow. Go and beg from someone. You have a wonderful friend called Drupada. Go to him. He's a king and he has already promised that he will give 50% of his kingdom to you. Why don't you just go and ask him something? That is when Dronacharya goes to meet Drupada. Let me take this question. Okay, Vinodji was asking, how did we lose all the technology that we spoke? Okay. And Vinod is also asking another question, that means we should not have food from a restaurant. Absolutely. We should not take anything in the restaurants, because the people who are cooking in the restaurants are having the consciousness of gaining more and more money. It's all money thing that is going on there. And we don't know how clean they are, how unclean they are. And they must have fought with their husband or wife at home, and they are thinking about it. With that consciousness, they are cooking the food and you are eating it. When you eat something in the restaurant, that consciousness comes to you, and then you will mess up with your family. I can give you enough evidence on this, how food can directly impact our mind and our consciousness. We will definitely discuss more about this when we come to that point. And how did we lose the technology that we had, like earlier Sanjaya had? Yeah, there was Doordarshan. What Sanjaya was actually doing now, he had Doordarshan. Although he was sitting in Hastinapura with Dhritarashtra, he had the drishti to see, and that technology unfortunately is lost today, is because first thing is, this human body we are not utilizing to its full ability, its full capacity. So we are underutilizing this human form, and instead of learning this technology right from our education, when we go to schools, what we are studying is so many other things. It is all there, the technology is there, but we don't know how to access that technology. That is the unfortunate thing. So if somebody can understand and goes deeper into this science of communicating through the mind, it's called telepathy also. There are some people who communicate through the mind. Today in the modern terms it is called telepathy. So there are people who can communicate even now, but it requires a lot of practice, and we are not in the situation where we can practice all that. Otherwise it would be so great. We would not require this WebEx platform at all. We could have just gone on a mental platform and had a wonderful conversation without any network issues, with full audio and visual. Top HD quality. So yes, unfortunately we have lost that. Okay, I just want to wind up today's session by completing this story. So what happened then? This Dronacharya goes to Drupada, begs for one cow. He did not even ask the 50% of the kingdom which he had promised. And Drupada felt very insulted. Why? Just because Dronacharya is wearing all tattered clothes and he is the king. How can in the court of so many great people he is calling himself to be the friend of the king? So he felt very ashamed to be a friend of such a poor person. And out of that ego, Drupada denied all that he had promised and said, "You cannot be my friend." And that is when Dronacharya took a vow that I am going to put you down on your knees very soon with my disciples. And that is when he goes to Hastinapura and starts educating the Kauravas and the Pandavas. So that is the story. So why Duryodhana is taking the name of Drupada here is to incite anger in Dronacharya. So this is how we should understand that this Duryodhana is very expert, and we will discuss more about how Duryodhana is going to discuss about the different strategies and the different fighters on the other side. We know it's a very good quality of a leader to actually assess the strength of the opponents, and that is exactly what Duryodhana is doing. A great leader understands the strength and the weakness of the opponents, and Duryodhana is doing that now. He is already assessing the strength of the Pandavas, and he is going to actually describe the strength of the Pandavas to Dronacharya. And Yes, so there are so many beautiful things like that we can discuss. So today we have analyzed the very first shloka, we have understood the timeline, how this, at what point of time of this battle this first shloka was spoken. We understood the mood of Dhritarashtra, we understood who Sanjaya was, we understood how they were communicating with each other, and we understood how we have to understand the Bhagavad Gita itself, why Bhagavad Gita as it is only. So, and we also understood the mood of Duryodhana also. So we should know Dhritarashtra was blind physically and spiritually. He was spiritually also not elevated. But here, Duryodhana, although he can physically see, but even Duryodhana is spiritually blind. So both son and father are spiritually blind. So that will become very evident in the next few sections of our discussion. And I also gave you that the breakup of the first chapter, so you can always refer to that. I will try to share that in the group as well, so you can refer and understand the breakup of the first chapter. So before we end the session, I would like to take some questions. So the discussion that we had today, if that has triggered some questions in you, please feel free to ask the questions.